Hello. Thank you for attending my presentation, which will be discussing the importance of data in storytelling. And my name is Erin Starzyk. I am a researcher specializing in HIV, STIs, and hepatitis. So today our objective is to discuss why data is important to storytelling and also to outline ways to use data to understand your work and your stories. As data scientists, whether we know it or not or want to acknowledge it, we are all storytellers. Data is a really powerful way to be storytellers, and we need to be that voice behind the data to really contextualize what it means and then also get it out to the people to effectuate sustainable change. So let's start and level set and really talk about what is data storytelling. So data storytelling is the practice of building a narrative around a set of data and its accompanying visualizations to help convey the meaning of that data in a powerful and compelling fashion. So there's a lot in that definition. But data storytelling is really a way that we are starting to communicate through multiple methods what our data means and how it resonates to our audience. There's a lot of different ways to storytell the data through reports, through infographics, through data dashboards, and other visualizations as well. And it's really important to understand how your audience also digests the data. And we'll talk about the importance of that throughout this presentation. So, what are the fundamental elements of data storytelling? And when we understand the fundamental elements and how they impact the audience, then we really are starting to understand the process for how to do data storytelling effectively. But just to start, really, we have a couple Venn diagrams in here, which I will start to explain. But really, the fundamental elements are narratives, data, and visuals. And these are not mutually exclusive in that they really all need to work in connection with one another throughout the process of data storytelling, meaning they're all necessary in order to move this forward within that. So let's look at the first Venn diagram within here. So we have narrative, visuals, and data. And what we have within there is that we have the point that's touching all of them is this word explain. So using all of these, at first what we want to do is really explain what is going on within the data. So here's what we're seeing as data scientists, and here's how we're explaining it. And we do this through using our data to create a narrative that also creates visuals. Again, tailoring to your audience and really understanding how does your audience digest and process data within there. So that's the first step, is you want to really explain it. But then you also want to, in the next middle Venn diagram, is enlighten people. Having that aha moment where a piece of data really resonates with the people that you're trying to communicate with as well. So again, having it all there, and the really, the important one within there, visualizations really start to pop within the enlightening page as well. And then we go to the next section is the next Venn diagram, which is the next step is the process. And we really want to make sure that we are engaging people. And engaging means not just doing a presentation. It's the next step on enlightening when something resonates. And now it's engaging. What are we going to do? What are the next steps that we need to do? Do we need to collect more data? Do we need to inform our programs within there? Do we need to bring this to another audience to make sure that we have all of the players at the table to move the needle to where we want to go? So really understanding that, and there's a lot within this slide as well, but that is going to help move this process of data storytelling so that we start with explaining what it is, and then we enlighten our audience or the community that we're working with. And the next step is we engage. So really understanding that it is a process. It's just not one point in time. It's a continuous process. So as I said, it is a process within there, and the process, digging down a little bit deeper, is that we really want to making sure that we understand what it's saying. And often the understanding part is rather iterative. So you will sit in groups. Maybe you initially start on your own, and then you bring it to your colleagues, but then you also bring it to the community that you work with. What does this mean? Having these continuous feedback loops so that the interpretation is not just coming from one person and one perspective, but multiple perspectives to ensure that the data is meaningful. And just understanding how to process within that data too. Making sure that all the players are at the table as well, but also making sure that the data is processed in a way, whether using quantitative and qualitative, that is adherent to theories and guidelines and approaches. And then from that, we really understand what is the value, what are the golden nuggets within there, as well. What are the points that make the meaning within the data, or is going to get us to that enlightening aha moment as well. And then we want to visualize the data. So what makes sense to how to visualize the data as well? Do we do this through different storytelling with different quotes within there? Or do we do this more in a quantitative approach where we have a data dashboard that allows people to filter and interact with the data? Do we bring people in that have also are part of the data collection process or are participants in it as well? They can help inform the visualization, but then also take it to the next step, which is communicating the data. And so as data scientists, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we go throughout this whole process of storytelling and really going to what we often call the last mile with communicating the data and figuring out the venues that are appropriate to get this data out to the people that need it and in the ways that they need it as well. And often it's multiple different levels because we need those different perspectives at the table to move it along. Because when we deal in public health, most of the issues that we're facing are multi-level at the individual, at the community, at the organizational level, at the institutional level. So you really need to make sure that you're taking all those levels into account, because the goal is to effectuate change, bring more positive health outcomes, but we can't ignore any of the voices that need to be at the table. So what is the goal of data storytelling? And we talked about that in our previous slide, but it is change, right? So we've identified an issue that is not going as well as we want to, or there's something that is missing. And so we want to take all of these pieces together to, when you're looking at this diagram here, is for change. But in order to do this, all of these components really need to work together. So we need to make sure that we have a robust narrative, as well as a visualization to complement that, and making sure that our data is complete and meaningful. And then we go through the process of explaining, enlightening, and engaging, and then we'll all meet at the center to start making some changes within that. So why does data storytelling work? Well, stories are something that have been resonate with people. We are all storytellers, whether we know it or not, regardless of being data scientists. We love movies, we love TV, we love books, we love songs. These are all stories that are meaningful to people, and the stories are often more memorable. So storytelling really focuses on the memorability of it. It's not about just throwing numbers out at people, but what does it mean and what do I need to know for my work to move it forward? And then also this element of persuasiveness. So in-depth stories are more likely to persuade people. Seeing a sea of numbers is often not persuasive because that becomes overwhelming. But what are the few data points that we need to highlight and tell an in-depth story about? As well, we can be a mile long and an inch deep, but that's not really going to move people the way that we want to. We don't want to throw the kitchen sink at people. We want to be really thoughtful about how we do this and being really in depth. And by doing that, we're also persuading people to move forward so we get to that middle change element that we saw in the Venn diagram. And then we talked about as well is that element of engagement. And that is why data storytelling works as well, because you can see yourself in the story, you understand the story, and you become more engaged. And then you become less critical and you're more open to changes because it's a story and you want to be able to be part of that story to move towards that positive change. So, what is a story you're trying to understand? We're all trying to understand things, right? There is so much data that is out there. We just need to start understanding that data more and telling that story. And so, what I have for you here, this looks like a lot of text in there, but it's really a guide for how to approach storytelling and really taking it step by step. So, I'm going to go through these steps and talk through them at a high level. But again, what is the story or question you want to explore? We have a lot of those, what are the barriers to care, right? So sometimes we start within there, does telehealth work for the population that I'm working with? How does health equity factor into accessing different services? So there, start with something. What are the questions that you want to start with? And then thinking through, well, how will you measure this? Right. And I want to talk about this point too, because we often, when we see this point, we want to use primary data collection sources. And what I ask everyone to do first is seeing what data has already been collected, what secondary sources are out there that we can utilize. One, this is an effective way to conserve resources, FTE as well, but also working with the population or communities where we want to effectuate change, asking them to do another survey or focus group or interview can often be emotionally taxing and exhausting. So really being thoughtful about what do we currently have? Look at that. What are the gaps that we still need in order to tell this story? And then through that, what are the best methods for it? Is it an online survey? Is it an in-person focus group? Is it, a community listening session that's really informal and not overly formal? So kind of thinking through your audience, but the best thing to do is also talk to your audience, talk to your community. How do they want to be engaged in this? And this will really pay dividends in the end. And then understanding through that, what is the narrative? What are you hearing through these, looking at these primary and secondary data sources too? And then how will you analyze and synthesize the data and the narrative too? So we keep hearing that this certain population is having issues with accessing telehealth services. And that is the narrative that we keep hearing. But how will we analyze that and synthesize the data? And so I also really implore you, before you go about collecting data, is to write your analysis plan, because every response item that you ask is high real estate. And we really need to be mindful of the people's time that we're asking, because time is our most valuable resource as well. And we really want to make sure that we have trust within the community that we're working in. So really thinking through about what your analysis plan, what is your synthesis within it, and how are you addressing this narrative that you're hearing? And then how will you visualize this? What will it look like? What are the instruments that are needed to get this information out to the community? And again, what is the community, or who are the key stakeholders? And often visualizations for this and dissemination products may look very different at different levels. And as we talked about before, really taking this ecological approach in that having all of the levels addressed, so then we can effectuate sustainable change. Because we don't want to leave anyone out, because we know that becomes problematic when we leave people out of the equation. And then what are your plans for communicating the story to partners, community stakeholders, funders, and clients? Again, as we talked about in the previous slide, this is often referred to as the last mile. So as I stated before, to really make sure that your work is informed by the community or the people that you're serving or working with, you want to talk to them about how they want to receive the data. And often, sometimes you may see that you will start with a blank piece of paper and people will give you ideas, or you have some ideas in your pocket that you can share. Well, here's what I did previously. I created a dashboard within there, or I created a one-page infographic that highlighted the points. Or I had a podcast on a dating app. So really kind of thinking through different innovative ways to make sure that the data is going out to the population as well. So those are my presentation on data storytelling. I know that this is a recorded section, so there isn't an opportunity for questions and answers, but I do want to say that please do reach out to me, that there is not a one size fits all approach for data storytelling. It requires a lot of flexibility, ability to also be iterative, and ability to also be able to say, this didn't work and we have to start again as well, because we want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be meaningful to the community that we're working with. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to present today. Please keep in touch. Again, my name is Erin Starzyk, and I hope you all are enjoying the conference. Take care.